No, I still think it's weird. I think this is Ohio Riz.
Like if I had VR, if I had VR, I would probably play VR chat more, just like talk to random people. But like, I would not. I
Goofy
would
Girl,
not live
his
into that.
parents moved and he couldn't afford to live where we live by himself.
Yep.
Adulting is hard.
I think the hardest part about adulting is there's no amount of preparation you could have for it. It's just experience.
Yeah. Adulting, the thing is that like what you gotta realize is that everyone's kind of like hiding the fact that they don't know what's going on. So like your parents are just trying their best. They were just learning how to be parents and adults themselves.
Hmm.
So
I can't adopt Nick. I'm a fucking terrible roommate.
I don't think I could live with them.
Thanks, asshole.
You just said you're a terrible roommate. What?
I did say that. I agree with you, Will. What did you say? Like adulting's hard because people act like they're not. They know what
no,
they're
no, no, no.
doing or something like that.
The thing is that like we have a skewed perspective on that the generation before us had shit together, but it was just because they were hiding the fact that they didn't. And that's kind of just what adults do to children.
Yeah,
Mhm.
So then when you get there,
I agree with
you're
that.
kind of you're kind of like, what the fuck do I do? And your parents are like, well, I figured it out, and they don't really give you a lot to work on, and you kind of just have to like
Like,
hope for the best a lot, like they did.
my favorite thing to think of as, and I saw it like as a like as an Instagram meme, right? Uh, like the craziest thing is like as a kid, right? You see your teacher as someone like professional or someone who's like just there to be like someone adult. Yet they'll still go out to the bar. They could do hard drugs like weed and shit. And when you're at that age, like you're running around and trying to do weed behind your parents, and like it is so different knowing that like, oh, your parents did that or your teacher does that. Like you're doing the same thing as like an adult, and it's hard to see that's like what is, and being an adult is, if that makes sense. I don't know if that made sense what I just said.
Kind of.
I know. And when you're younger, you
'Cause, like
see like teachers and adults as invaluable. Like everything they're
sort of.
doing is for the right reason, and that's not the case. Or like they're always making the right decision, which is not the case.
Sort of, yeah. It's sort of more like when you're doing something as a like a teen or a child, like if you're like so, like the simplest example for us at least. I don't know how it is in Malaysia. I'm assuming it's the same. If you're doing something like drinking underage or smoking weed, you would assume like your parents wouldn't do this. You're so mature and you're hiding it because you're trying to act like an adult. But they did the same exact shit.
Muslims can't
Like
drink.
what you're doing, that's fair. Like what you're doing is very mature, but it's not. Um, and your parents probably did the same and is doing the same. You just don't know it because they're trying to either hide that idea from you or they're trying to show a better example. But it's the same shit. It's weird. I don't know. Like
You
I
have
don't know
your
if I'm
whole
making
ass out
sense.
on stream.
Like even if I was sober, I know. Um, if I was sober, I still wouldn't make sense because I still have a hard time like saying it or thinking it. But it's just such an interesting thought to me.
I think it's so interesting that you
Especially
have the
mentally, you know?
camera
Yeah, I
fully
agree.
like going into your kitchen.
because where I am, dumbass. I could put it here, like on this side.
I think Dom's kitchen is literally like 2 feet away
But it would make sense.
I know, but
from where he's sitting.
It is.
it's just like bro could have just left the room. And I think that's so funny.
You want me to? I'll just cook a dinner right now.
But yeah, what happened to your Thanksgiving stream? Did you ever do that?
I mean,
no,
he would
I didn't
do that today,
plan for
right?
it.
I guess he's not
Yeah.
doing anything.
Well, I wouldn't have done it today. I wanted to do like a really fun like Thanksgiving stream where I would do like a cooking stream where I'd have like 3 cameras set up and I would cook at my other house because it has a nicer kitchen. But I didn't really plan for it and I didn't really get the necessities for it, so I didn't do it. I didn't like even try. It's hard being broke. Why somebody let their children fuck around and let them make mistakes so they learn this? Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. I think that's the best way to do it.
Like
As long as like you supervise and not let them go fucking crazy.
Nobody knows how to parent, and like you try to fix what your parents did for you, and 9 out of 10 times like you realize what your parents did made sense when you fuck up your own child's life. But that could be also me saying that because I've been watching a lot of House.
House? Like WMD?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like there was an episode
MD.
where
House MD,
I
not
forgot what it was.
WMD.
There's an episode where someone ran away from their mother and they're like, "Oh, how did your parents fuck you up?" And like that was the whole stick or whatever. So that's in my head.
But if you think about
But
it,
yeah, like 100%.
there are what?
What?
Anyways, like, like
What are there,
obviously
Nick?
your parents when they parent you, that's their first time. Like
Yeah.
having to raise someone. But what if there are people who have had experience being a parent before, and then they have another kid with like a different family, or even grandparents, they've been parents before. It's like they have some knowledge.
That's why
of
like the
parenting.
middle child meme is like so relevant. You know what I'm talking about? Like the first child, like you'll like baby proof the house and all this shit, and the second child, like, oh, whatever, just eat a battery, it doesn't matter.
Dom, I never realized that we're the same.
Like that's why that meme's around.
What?
We are.
We're both.
I'm a little
boys
closer
surrounded by
to
2
my
girls.
siblings than you.
Oh shit.
What does that mean, Dom? What do you mean by that?
I don't know. But
You know my
at
relationship
Nick,
with my sister.
The thing is, right? So like, it is very true. Like, what was it? What was I gonna say? Like the whole like recent sense of like don't abuse your children and shit. You know what I'm talking about? Like I'm not saying it right. I know I'm not saying it right. Like, oh, don't like beating your children doesn't help. And yada yada yada. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
That's because a lot of like back in the day, like that's how you'd raise a kid. If if they did something stupid, hit your kid. So a lot of people who are growing up are like, oh, my parents raised me like this. I didn't feel it was right, so I'm gonna do better and not do that. But they don't know what they're doing. So that's the whole like sentiment of what I'm sort of saying.
Crazy example.
It's like they don't know. They just want to be better. But their parents didn't know, and the new parents, I don't know. I'm too stupid to speak.
Crazy example, but what you're saying makes sense. It's just a crazy example.
I don't think it's a crazy example. I think it's a perfect way to explain how no one knows what
The
they're
thi-
doing, but they're thinking they're going to do better.
it's just one of those things where it's like there is separate learning factors that go alongside that. You don't just decide, hey, I'm gonna not beat my child because my dad beat me. There's other factors that apply to that.
I
I
find it
don't think you're
interesting
wrong
how
in the
Dom, for
slightest.
the longest time, wanted to make a podcast, and that is essentially what this is now.
Yeah, I sort of lost interest in playing this game. I didn't want to make a podcast in the longest. I wanted to make, well, I guess. I wanted to make, like, I didn't want to just sit down and fucking talk to people. I wanted to make a themed podcast.
Yeah, you wanted to make a theme podcast.
Uh,
I
what
think
was the
fucking
theme
just
though?
be like, oh, let's just sit down and talk. Anything, I don't know. Like there's the You Should Know podcast, which I think they're really funny. They're actually pretty funny. They just sit down and they just talk about their day and it like happens. I think that's a stupid concept for a podcast. It worked out for them and good for them, not trying to discredit them or anything. But I'd rather see something more like the Always Sunny podcast, where they're talking about the show. It's themed in a certain way. Or even though I don't like Neil deGrasse Tyson as much, he has his own podcast where he talks about science and stuff. It's themed in a certain way, and he has specific guest stars where they talk about that specific subject.
All
Um,
right, so here's
I
the
don't
plan.
respect the Joe Rogan podcast as much. Yeah.
We're gonna play web fishing,
Because it's just
and
random
then
bullshit.
once we have a
Yeah.
season of web fishing, we'll then go back and do a podcast about how we were playing web fishing back then.
I mean, we could just do what we've done, which is just talk about random shit while playing web fishing.
I don't think, personally, granted, I don't listen to podcasts as much as probably will. What
I love
we've
podcasts.
talked about through this session of web fishing would be that intriguing to an audience. Maybe the
Hey, Goofy
last
Girl,
like
was this
30
interesting?
minutes, but the last hour where we're talking about Gen Z slang, I don't think it would be that interesting.
I thought that was interesting.
I thought it was interesting.
The Gen Z slang. The Gen Z slang.
Yeah,
See, the
'cause
thing
I
is,
was being informed of Gen
Respect.
Z slang, and Will was testing me on what I knew.
I listen to personality podcasts
Okay, I don't think it. I'm not.
more than listening to a topic podcast because, like, I like specific people, you know? Like, I'm not going to go and be like, hey, I'll listen to every video game podcast that I can. No, there's a million video game
I
podcasts. So I'm going
respect
to
that.
listen to the one that I like the person already that's talking about the video game.
Yeah,
So,
that makes sense.
so me, you, and Nick talking about whatever we want, sure. Can it get annoying? Yes. But the thing is that we're personalities instead of having a topic.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess because like when it comes to personality podcasts, like I have a friend who does like a movie review podcast, and I don't like. Good for them. I'll support it if I could. Um, I just don't think that's like good, interesting. Because like, who's this fucking random guy who watches movies?
Now, Goofy Girl, you should interrupt because Dom will talk too much. if you
Please
don't.
do. I'm a dumbass.
Oh, you don't have to.
Don't
talk
worry,
like
my
that,
English
really,
is
if you
worse
don't
than
want
yours, actually.
to. Yeah, he has dyslexia.
Well, how does that translate? So
I'm
he has
fucking
dyslexia.
stupid.
He's dyslexic, but how does that translate to verbal communication? Like,
Because he
does it
wasn't
actually
able to
affect him?
learn. He wasn't able to learn the language as quickly as the rest of us were. Because
I
the way that
don't think
we,
that makes sense. One,
well,
It makes a little bit of sense.
two, I'm just stupid. Don't give me like a cop out. I'm just stupid when it comes to the English language. Like I'm not even gonna try to sugarcoat it. Like I'm just not as good in the English language as someone else.
but yeah, like
Like,
consider
I'll,
Nick,
I'll, I'll admit it. I'm not scared.
that when you go to school, right? in kindergarten they go through the alphabet and they sort of attribute a word to each letter. So it'll be like A is apple, B is banana, C is color, right?
Mhm.
Now you can understand the sounds, but like if they then say to write it out and you don't get it, you're gonna try to sound it out. But like if you work the opposite way, then you just will never get there, right? Because at some point you're gonna stop getting the word first, and you're gonna start gonna get the letters first. Like when you're reading a book, you know?
Yeah, but uh, I don't know if this is what Goofy Girl is talking about. As she said, considering it's your mother tongue, because you can learn a language verbally.
True.
Because like, uh, if you go to a different country and they just start talking to you, eventually you'll pick up on what they're saying, but like you'll never like you don't have to look or like read to understand what they're saying. Like if
Yeah,
you're
but
there
you
long enough, you'll eventually catch on to, oh, this means hello, this means yes, this means uh food, this means that, this means thank you.
yeah, but you'll never be fluent in the language that way.
I guess so.
Do you think you're fluent in English?
Me?
Yeah.
No.
I think about it a lot, and it's like I don't think anyone's fluent in English, unless fluent just means you can talk to most people. But like, I feel like I don't know every single English word, you know?
Okay. You don't have to be you don't have to know every single word in a language.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but fluent is like the
fluent.
top level of knowing something.
I'll look up the definition because I think like what you're saying is interesting, but I don't think it's correct. Able to speak easily and smoothly.
Okay, so
Uh,
I'm not
what is
fluent yet.
maxim? What's the maximized level of knowing a language?
Fluent and able to express oneself easily and accurately. Able to speak and write particularly foreign language easily and accurately. Yeah, it's just like being able to use a language easily.
Okay.
Highest
Well, was it you who told me
level.
that the Korean language was made by a linguist?
Yeah,
Okay. Because I told someone that the other day, and I wasn't sure, and I didn't want to spread misinformation.
I believe the modern Korean language it
So
was like
Oh shit.
created by because like Korea is old, you know.
Yeah.
I heard that too. So to interrupt your conversation, and you could go back to it in a second. C2 proficiency is the highest English level there is, and therefore earns the title of mastery. It implies that the English user is similar on a level to a native speaker and not quite native, with full confidence and control of the language. So I'm looking at a photo that says C2 mastery. Verbal level approximation 1,600 words, approximately 1,000 to 1,200 hours of study. That's what would be the definition of fluidity in the English language, at least. The highest level,
'Cause
What is
really, a
if that makes
thousand
sense.
different words is not that much.
Goofy Girl.
It's not.
Um, when in school, did you learn English? Because I'm guessing you learned Chinese from your family.
She would learn English from her family.
No, she learned. She says she was raised to speak English and Chinese, and that her Malay is really bad. So I would assume that Chinese she learned in at home, and English she learned in school.
I
And
think
that
that's
Malay
pretty common.
she learned colloquially. All subjects were in English. Yeah, that's interesting.
That is interesting. I think it's rather interesting that like how I guess the word would be common English is. I don't think it's interesting on why it is, but like there's this one meme that goes around from Reddit where someone said something incorrectly grammatically, and someone pointed it out, and they're like, "Oh, I learned English as my second language because I wanted to. You know English because you have to, something like that. You know what meme I'm talking about?
Hmm.
Or I'm just yeah. So like that's such an interesting thing that English is such a popular language, like next to Mandarin, I guess. Just period. That's it. There's nothing else
Was
to
it
it. To add.
because like English and Chinese are like the language of the internet?
No, it's
Um,
because well English would be because most computer softwares are English, so anyone who's studying computer science would learn English. It's also there's there's four countries that speak English natively: U.S., Canada, the U.K., and Australia. Um, China is just because it is the biggest business market. That's why you would learn something like Mandarin. Any other language, it's sort of out of passion or birthright, if that's the correct word to use.
it is a wildly modern conversation. The like English is widespread because of colonization.
Yeah, and also
So,
computer science, because
sure, but it was
like if
already in so
Goofy
many
Girl,
places.
who no, I don't disagree with you, but I'm saying like if Goofy Girl wanted to learn computer science, didn't learn English in school at all, if she wanted to pick up something like Java, C++, HTML, she would have to use the English language to program. Like there isn't a simple like translation difference. There are languages, I don't know them off the top of my head, that use Indian, I don't know what that language is, or Mandarin instead of English, but C++ is coded in the English language. So Goofy Girl would learn broad words like break or loop or wow while not being fluent in the language, which I find interesting.
All right, now I'm gonna be the friend that's a little too woke. What you described is just more colonization. It's just another. It's just
It's
another.
sort.
It's just.
I
It's
wouldn't
just
say I
another.
wouldn't say you're
It's just
wrong, but
another
I also would
direction. It's
say
just
that
they're not learning English because
go
of
on.
that, but that's just a reason to learn English.
Yes, that's the whole point.
Because Nick's question was, why is English like a language that whatever Nick asked, and you then describe the computer science
It's
thing.
interesting.
Colonization comes first. A lot of places speak English. We create programming languages that are semi-universal, and then places have to learn English to adapt to those programming languages.
Yeah. Like I could be slightly wrong, but I remember talking to someone who is from India, and I was talking to them about like computer science, and they're like, "Yeah, it's in English." Like they learned English for other means, but like Java is English. Period. I don't think it's. I'm not saying it's not colonization. I think it's just the person who made it was like, "Oh, this is easier for me to understand. Let me write it in this," and then it became popular. Like, what is it? There's this very common language that is used in like tax systems, like ATMs and banking systems, called Cobalt, which was made in like the late 80s, which was used for New York State and the ATMs and yada yada yada, which is being slowly died out, but it was made in English. Java was a similar process where they wrote Java for a program. It became popular, it became widespread to other countries like China, India, yada yada yada, where it was just like, oh, we just have to adapt to this. Like there are languages like Cobalt that are not used in other countries that were just used in English because the author of it, used English.
Now, I'm not gonna say I know shit about computer
Everybody.
program, computer programming language, but I will note that India is majority English speaking.
Yes, which is fascinating to me. But probably because, like China, they're a very big. I guess I would say tech giant.
No,
But
it's
since they're
because of colonization.
popularized, is it? I would have,
Yes,
I would have believed
India,
you
India,
100%. But I'll
India was
also just
owned
say,
by England, but for so long.
yeah, 100%.
There's a big war
I
over
would
it.
just say because like they're a big market there. They're just a big market for like tech centers and tech support and stuff. That's how I
No,
would
it's a lot.
rationalize it.
The thing is that like, sure, definitely in like a more poverty centric area of India, where it's like poor people need to get jobs, and the jobs that exist in India are very tech centered, like being a call center place. Um, whatever. I'm reading your cousin's comment, but fucking
Yes, colonization.
uh, but like the higher class, I guess, in the upper class, the middle class of India already knew English, because what the British did is they would go to a place and like set up schools that would just completely anglicize the area that they would go to, which is what Goofy Girl was talking about. Is that her area of Malaysia is British, basically, because they have to learn English, they have to do all this, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, because they were owned by the British. Nick, did you die?
Yeah, the fucking whole that like there's um I think I showed you, Will. There's this one group of people, like the native population of Australia. They're like going into public meetings and doing their native chant. 100% what you're saying, Brandon. But I don't think that pertains all too well with what Will's saying. I don't know what Will's saying. I sort of just like zoned out. Like I zoned out because I was confused that the music was still playing, but I closed the game.
Doesn't matter. Dom can't speak English good. That was the main point of this conversation.
Oh yeah, that's how that started.
Yeah, that's where it started.
But yeah, I gotta go to bed. It's 5 in the morning.
Yeah, I've been starving for
It
3
is 5 in
hours
the morning.
Why aren't you eating?
I'm gonna play an ARAM and go
because
to
we
bed.
were
Oh, I
talking.
wanted to...
You can eat while talking, bro.
No, because then I have to go downstairs and make something.
That's
So
crazy.
I'd rather
Nick,
just sit here and suffer.
Do you live with your parents?
Yes.
I wasn't sure if you live with your
I thought
grandparents.
you didn't.
No, when we first moved down here, I had to live with my grandparents because the house wasn't ready yet. And it was supposed to be ready after 3 months. It ended up being a year. So I lived with my grandparents for a year.
Gotcha.
Oh,
All right.
posture check's crazy.
It's a posture check.
Oh,
Bro, are you seriously
So that's
playing League now?
Get good posture.
Are you starting up?
I wanted to
League?
play a quick ARAM.
You're actually insane.
League was open the whole time.
You're a disgusting troglodyte.
ARAMs take like 20 minutes. Troglodyte?
Yeah, you're a troglodyte.
I'm gonna play League, maybe get DoorDash for White Castle.
All right, same time tomorrow, guys.
Probably not, because I have work tomorrow.
what'd you say to me?
What'd you say? We should make
The
this
Drug League.
podcast a weekly thing.